Uh, my involvement with childcare has two bases. One is that I'm a father of 5 children, and I've spent 19 years in childcare centers around the province, Quebec City and Montreal. And so my interest has been raised very much when the childcare system in Quebec was built at the end of the 1990s. I'm also going to show you 8 slides to put something on the table so that you know the basics of the Quebec experiment, which is very important because it has been the model on which the expansion of the childcare system to all the provinces in Quebec has been spurred by federal money that has been coming in spades since a couple of years ago. Okay. These are my beloved grandchildren, 2 of them. To your left is Johan, who is a 9-year-old mathematician, and to your right is Loic, who is a 13-year-old soccer star. And they are in Rivière-du-Loup, which is on the shore of the St. Lawrence River, and learning about nature as every children should have the opportunity to do. And they are among the few Montrealers who know that there are 2 tides per day in the lower St. Lawrence area. Okay. The first slide is what does the Educational Childcare Act look? It was launched in 1997, and the 3 objectives were to improve work balance, to enhance child development, and to foster equality of opportunity. This is exactly how it is labeled in the Act itself. And it was thought that regardless of employment, marital, or income status, all parents should have access to low-cost spaces for their 0-5 preschool children. How did this come about? Well, the mid-1990s for Quebec province, I mean, childcare and social services are in Canada a provincial responsibility, not a federal responsibility. Ottawa can put forward money for financing, but the provinces have the responsibility of dealing with and operating the system itself. Okay, it came about because the provincial premier, Mr. Bouchard, was going on a zero deficit policy, a liberal, ultra-liberal policies. But since he's a centrist, he didn't want to look too far right. And so in order to balance his zero deficit policy, he was looking for something to add to social policy to look like he was a man of the center, not of the extreme right or left. Okay. So his education and family minister, Mrs. Marois, was the one who would put forward the act, and she was convinced by the scientific literature from economics, psychology, and neurology that the first 3-4 years in life are the most important for the rest of the life. And Mr. Bouchard went on and started this. One thing which is maybe very important for people outside of Canada is to understand that that act, when it was created, was created with a wide consensus across all political parties. We're not a province like Ontario or a country like the United States, where there is polarization, sharp polarization between right and left. There was a wide consensus across all political parties for that. So it didn't cause any difficulty to launch a program. Now, what is the system about? The system includes 4 types of childcare. The first 3 types are directly subsidized, and it cost $8.85 in 2023. I think it's $9.10 this year in 2024. And the first of the 3 reduced fee system with directly subsidized spaces is the early childhood centers, as Sylvana called them, the CPE, in French, the Centre de la Petite Enfance. They have over 1/3 of all children in childcare in Quebec, and they have an international recognition in pediatrics journals, in the American Medical Association journals, that they are of very high, their standards of quality are very high. And there are 2 other, the reason why there are 4 types is that the government wanted to give people more choice among various possibilities. The 4th possibility is the full fee-for-profit private centers. They now get a bit over 20% of all children in care. Very often they get children, they have children who are waiting for an early childhood center or CPE space, because of course the number of spaces is limited, and so the rationing forces them to go to private center in first place, and then after a year or 2, once they get a call, they go to the CPE. Okay, so 63% of all Quebec children now are in some form of provision of childcare in the province. So it's 295,000. And it's not a government-run system. I mean, the government sets standards for wages and all that. There's provincial-wide negotiation for the CPE, but each CPE is an independently run private, non-profit concern, and of course the full fee-for-profit private center are also private, of course. Okay, now immediately after the system was launched in March 1997, September 1997, there was a very sharp rise in the number of children, of mothers who decided to send their kids to childcare, and over 5 or 6 years, we were up to 200,000 from 80,000 children. Then there was later on a more moderate increase up to 300,000 this year of children in care. It's been immediately hugely popular in Quebec families, among mothers. Also, the attendance was very evenly distributed between high school graduates and university graduates. In other words, it was not skewed in favor of only university. Of course, people from disadvantaged family who have not even a high school degree still are not numerous enough in the system. As you can see, the S curve, which is the standard diffusion curve, has a very short initial bend in the curve. So it's a very well-established system with almost 2/3 of all children between 0 and 5 in attendance. Now, for this is a picture that Silvana presented this morning, which shows that Quebec and Sverige, Sweden, have the highest labor force participation rate of women age 25 to 54 in the world. Other Canadian provinces were at something like 81 or 82%, but since the federal government has expanded the subsidies that provinces can get, the labor force participation rate of Canadian women outside of Quebec has begun to increase. It was now 85% in 2023. And finally, you see that the United States comparatively lags very far behind Sweden or Canada in this respect in terms of labor force participation rate of mature women. Okay. Additionally, the hourly gap, wage gap between Quebec women and men in 2023 is half what it was in 2000. In 2000, women earned, the average hourly wage of women was 17% below men's, and now it's 8.5%. So there was, over the full period where the system was established and has come to maturity, you've seen a very much an increase. It's not only the child care policy, of course, it's the fact that we also have an enhanced parental leave program. There is one for the entire country of Canada, but the Quebec program of parental leaves is more flexible and somewhat more generous than the Canadian system. And further, we have an extremely high level of educational attainment by women, by girls against boys in the province. So that those three factors are helping quite a bit. The child care system, the parental leave system, and the very high educational attainment of young women in Quebec, even compared to other provinces. Also, Quebec is a very consensus-based society, I would say. It's particularly not only the Francophone, but also the Anglophone Quebecers have always been together to minimize social distance between the rich and the poor. And so this improvement in Quebec women's relative wages is a product of that too. What is the takeaway from the empirical evidence we have on the Quebec system? First of all, as I just showed, women's labor force participation rate has increased very sharply and evenly across educational categories, okay? of course, educational categories exclude those without at least a secondary degree. Enhanced parental leaves have complemented the childcare reform. I'm repeating what I've been saying, but now what I want to emphasize is that the empirical evidence is there. I'm not going to give the details of that, but it's there. The setbacks in wages and careers following births have declined sharply also. In other words, one of the big problems women have in mixing child raising and work, outside work, is the time constraint, but also it's the fact that when they stop working, there are job separations, there is a retardation of increases in wages and promotions and all that. And my colleagues at the University of Quebec here in Montreal have found that with our system of childcare and parental leaves, about 80% of the retardation of the improvement in the work, in wages and promotions and all for women, for the new mothers, has disappeared thanks to those programs. So it's not only, in other words, childcare and their effect on the time of women is not only for the time when the child is between 0 and 5, there's a longer run effect on their career. In other words, they don't have only jobs, but they also have a larger number of them have careers. They can have good careers, better careers. The Quebec GDP has increased by some 1.5 to 2%, but permanently, of course, if you discount that over a long period of time, this is a huge amount. So the Quebec GDP is something like 600 billion Canadian dollars, and the addition to GDP is about $10 billion. The reform has been paying for itself. This is what my own contribution has been twofold. One, to consolidate what my colleagues have been doing here at UQAM, and also a very good group outside of Quebec and Toronto, MIT, and UBC. They've found that the labor force participation rate of women, really with longitudinal data, you can have the very convincing, compelling evidence that this is not a correlation, but a causal, but a consequence of the childcare system. But what I've added to that is that the reform has been paying for itself. In other words, if you look at what the system, the additional cost of the system over and above what it would have been without this new system, and you compare this with what the additional taxes, income taxes and consumption taxes paid by the women and the additional women in the labor force, paid by the businesses that hire those women, and you find that overall there is no increase in taxes needed to launch such a wide system like this. And of course, in the United States, that's all that. The only thing that counts often is how many taxes you pay. Another discussion we've had in Canada is whether it is better to have a universal or a targeted program. The Robin Hood tradition is that you soak the rich to give to the poor. And the Scandinavian tradition is you get what you pay for. The Quebec system and the ensuing Canadian system is bent on the Scandinavian tradition. In other words, the system is universally open to every class of society, independently of income, and not targeted to the poor for a number of reasons, which I list therefore. The lessons we've learned is that the economic well-being of women and families has been greatly enhanced, that there's been no increase in taxes to launch and to operate such a system marginally compared to what things would have otherwise been. And third, we've figured out that the universal system is preferable to one targeted to the poor. There remain big challenges. First of all, there still remain a big shortage of spaces. One of my sons, and daughter-in-law just have their new baby, Theo, who is entering a for-profit childcare center, but is waiting for a call from the closest CPF they have. So there is a shortage of space, and the government has made public its intention to enlarge the number of spaces very much in the coming years. But there is also an important need to increase quality everywhere, as everyone here does in fact understand. But there's a trade-off economically between those first two challenges. Either you're going to go whatever the quality to increase the number of spaces, or you go more slowly to increase the number of spaces, and you put more money to increase the average quality of each space. Okay, so this is the trade-off we're facing at this time. And of course, to attract more disadvantaged children and explore expansion of services to pregnant mothers, which is, I think, what will come beyond childcare. It's going to be fetus care and mother-to-be care. Okay. Thank you very much.
On a le temps pour 2 questions. Oui, parfait.
Any questions? Voilà.
Sure.
Sharon Goldfeld from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you. Can you hear okay? Thank you so much.
You can ask your question. I will make sure.
Okay, I would really like to say it in French, but my French is really bad, despite many Duolingo classes.
No question of language.
So my question is really, it's a very interesting time for Australia. Australia is considering whether or not it should provide universal free childcare. And I think there's some real challenges for that in the current policy environment, because in Australia, it will really suck up every single dollar really for children and mean that we probably won't get anything up for children for quite some time. And the second is the equity issue. It goes to your question around quality and the challenge between targeted and universal. So my question to you is, if you had to start again, because that's where we are now, if you had to start again, what might you do in Quebec if the aim was to both make a difference for the economic well-being of women and make an equitable difference to the child development outcomes of children?
Alors, si on avait à recommencer, qu'est-ce qu'on ferait de différent pour que les objectifs, le double objectif de favoriser le bien-être économique des femmes et le développement des enfants soient atteints?
I would say that we should not have allowed the private for-profit sector to expand as we did in 2009. What the point at that time was that the government felt there was still a shortage of spaces, one, but also that it did not believe me that the system was paying for itself. In other words, the $2 billion that they were paying for the system, which came from taxes from additional women and additional consumption. I mean, those dollars don't have an indication on them that they come from that. And the government thought that $2 billion a year was much too much. So they sought for a way to solve the shortage of spaces and at the same time to reduce the cost to the government so that people would send their kids to their toddlers and all that to a private sector. But that was a wrong move if you're concerned about child development, because it turns out, as Silvana showed this morning, that those for-profit, private, full-fee sector has a very low average quality. So they should have spent more money in that. And the reason why, I know that everyone wants more money to spend in their own beloved sector, but our sector, childcare and child development, is the most important of all sectors in all government programs on this planet Earth. Okay, as my colleague James Heckman said. And so I would have, instead of launching this non-profit or full profit sector, I would have simply added more money to expand the CPA sector, the early childhood center system, for which all the articles that you can find in the international literature, scientific literature, says that they are on top of the world. Okay, so my concern is basically with child development. I'm an economist. I know what money is about, but if we want child development, a better child development, you have to put more money in that. And the laissez-aller with this development expansion of full fee for profit private centers has been the worst decision that has been made with this program, with the system over the years. And I'm not a leftist. Okay, I'm pro-child.